Hi, my name is Sean Mabry. I am a writer, and today last night I made a little bit of an oopsie, but it reminded me of an extremely important lesson that I wanted to share with you here today because, let me give you the scenario here. So, last night, as part of the Writing Success Boot Camp I'm part of, hosted by Art Holcomb, I sent in the second revision of a short story called First Time at Werebeasts Anonymous. And the basic premise is kind of what it sounds like in the title. It's a version, a sort of a fantasy version of AA, but it's for werewolves and werebears and shapeshifters, and it's basically werebeasts, shapeshifters, and metamorphs of all kinds are welcome. And it's a pretty direct metaphor for actual addiction recovery groups. And I ended up sending the wrong version of the story into Art. Because this morning when I popped it open and looked at the notes, I was reading through it and I was like, wait, some of these notes don't make sense. And I actually read my actual text, not just his comments on the side, and I was like, oh shoot, this isn't the most recent version of the story. Because during the revision process, I went and written a new opening, which was it was another stab in the dark. Like I felt like I from the first draft, I knew that the second half of the story was pretty solid, but the first half was just a jumble. And so I wrote this second version of the opening. I was like, no, it's still not right. It's still not the right tone. So then I went and wrote a third version of the opening, and that's when I knew I was onto something. And even though I still don't think it's perfect, I know that version of the story is right on track. But I accidentally sent in the wrong that second middle version where I was still kind of figuring things out. And one of the notes he made on that version, that awkward middle version, was something to the effect of, just a thought, it'd be interesting if you talk to someone who's actually been in AA. And I haven't specifically been to an AA meeting yet, but I am going through a different recovery group process, a different 12-step program for a different kind of addiction. And it bothers me so profoundly that didn't come across in that version of the story. And I think that's part of why intuitively I knew that wasn't the right version, that I didn't quite have it, and that's why I went and wrote a different opening. And it reminds me actually of another short story I wrote a while back called The Empire of the Sun People, where the first few drafts, much like this middle draft of the Werebeast story, had this kind of flippant tone, I guess you could call it. It was humorous but detached. It was very chatty. It was very kind of casual and scatterbrained. And I know that tone, I'm starting to realize my own pattern here, that tone comes out specifically when I'm writing about something that makes me uncomfortable. And what I end up doing as I revise is I'm like, okay, but what would this sound like if it was sincere? Because the final version of that story I'm working on now, that I think, well, not the final version, but the most current version of that story that I know is right, I know is on the right track, is also the vastly more sincere version. Way more sincere than the first draft, way more sincere than the second draft. And the big lesson there for us, fiction writers, I'm really specifically want to dial in on fiction writers right now, because, and really especially speculative fiction writers, right? Like I'm writing fantasy here. We have the ultimate license to be honest, to be brutally honest about how we feel, about how we see the world, about what we've experienced, because we have the armor of fantasy, we have the armor of fiction to be able to say, well, no, that was just my character. It's a little bit different with nonfiction, and even the nonfiction you have to open up your soul essentially and expose yourself. But I think there's an edge you can play to as a fiction writer, and I think you actually have a responsibility to play to that edge in terms of just how much you're going to reveal of yourself, because at the end of the day you have the ultimate out. So why not go all the way to that edge, all the way past where you are comfortable showing yourself? Because that's one of the unique things that fiction lets us do. And if you aren't doing that, you're robbing yourself of one of the best forms of self-discovery available to us. It's one of the greatest gifts of being a writer. and you're robbing your audience of a story that's really, really important and worth reading. So, and I am absolutely talking to myself here like I am on so many of my other videos and blog posts. I'm trying to remind myself of my own wisdom here. Play to that edge. Be as terrifyingly honest as you can be. And don't get caught in the trap of trying to be casual or chatty or humorous in a shallow way. Don't try to make something funny as a way to not talk about it. Just frickin' talk about it. And the goal should be that someone who has been through that, and I have no clue if Art's ever been to AA or anything like that, but I should hope that when I get to the final version of this story, I can hand it to someone who's been through a 12-step program, and they'll understand that I'm speaking from experience. That they'll know that I'm not just making this up. I am just making this up, but I'm not just making this up. That should be the goal with your fiction. Whatever kind of experience you're trying to speak to, either because you've been through it yourself or you've connected deeply with someone who has. That's it for today. I had to get this one off my chest immediately because it was like burning a hole in my brain, and it's such an important lesson. And Art was right to write that comment because it reminded me of what we're really doing here, and it's one of the many reasons why I'm so grateful for this course. I'll see you all again next week. Feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, see ya.